Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Rose.
And I'm Jessica Bun Bun.
Welcome to our reaction and review for Yellowjackets Season 3, Episode 5. Somehow, some way, we've already made it to the halfway point of this season. That doesn't actually feel possible. Why did you guys give us 2 episodes at once? You're speeding this up too fast.
Yeah, this season is really going by quickly.
Yeah, I will say this from the jump. Like, I thought Episode 4 was my favorite episode of the season. I thought it had the trial, I thought was really, really compelling. Losing Lottie in the time period we did was really shocking. And now I'm coming out of Episode 5, and I feel like we've taken a step back. There was some stuff in this episode that really frustrated me, that I have a lot of questions. Maybe it's just me, but if I'm feeling any sort of grief for losing somebody who I was in the wilderness with, even if we weren't the best of friends, I'm not sure I would be going undercover with the guy that I barely even know in order to get answers on what happened.
Yeah, that was frustrating for me. This was my least favorite episode of the season. There's been a lot of stuff that I have really liked about this season, but at the same time, and stuff that I expect with this show. This is a really gruesome show about pretty gruesome topics. So I expect there to be a lot of that going on in this show. But for whatever reason, there has been an abnormal amount of violence towards animals this season, specifically rabbits. And as you guys can see, I've got my rabbit here with me. And it probably is partially because I am a bunny mom that seeing basically 4 of these episodes out of 5 episodes have some sort of bunny related deaths, or they're eating them. And I understand, listen, bunnies are prey animals.
Yeah.
That is what happens to them. Humans eat them, animals eat them. That is just the way that it is.
Yeah.
But for me, it's been really, I think because the show is set up that it is humans coming against other humans and doing these terrible things to other humans, when it starts to come into animals or children is where I start to get really uncomfortable, because these are innocents that can't fight back.
Yeah.
And in this situation where it's it's survival, we have to eat what's here, so we're going to eat bunnies. Okay, all that makes sense. But when they start kind of getting into what happened here with Ty, where it's I'm just pumping myself up to be able to go kill Ben. I'm just going to kill this rabbit for no reason. I was just okay. But the thing that's starting to really irk me about this show is I've now watched a bunny be held on its back, which you should never do. It can give them a straight up heart attack. They go into this weird trance state where they freeze, the fight, flight, or freeze. They freeze and their hearts can just stop in their chest. In this episode, I am hoping that it was some sort of AI trick, but it didn't look like it, where we saw Ty was holding the rabbit by the back of their neck. And that is the thinnest part of a rabbit's skin, where it is extremely dangerous to hold a rabbit by the scruff. It's you might as well have grabbed them by their ears. It's so thin that you can permanently damage an animal, a rabbit, by doing that, especially as an adult. You always have to hold them by their bottom. And sorry for the PSA, but not sorry.
Well, I think it's a problem, and I think this happens on a number of shows at a certain point, where they think that they're going to deliver these visceral scenes to make you feel really, really uncomfortable. But
and they did. I'm just mad.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between doing something that makes you uncomfortable, but then doing something that actually pulls you out of the show, makes you start worrying about, animals who are a part of a show that they didn't necessarily sign up for. And, hopefully a lot of it really is some sort of AI trick or something like that, like you suggested. But it was uncomfortable. I think the biggest thing to me is just that they don't need to show all of this on screen. We already know that this is a very brutal world and that really brutal things happen. I just don't think there's an effectiveness in showing that. In this episode in particular, the end of it has something very brutal happen to Coach Ben.
Yes.
If you want to just show that the world is brutal, you're doing it with an actor who is willingly aware of what's happening to his character, who's signing up for it, who's acting it, who's playing it out. And, that's something we've all been sort of desensitized to, is like stuff happening to human actors on shows. And it's just when it ventures into that other territory, that's where it gets uncomfortable. And, this show has always been in a spot where it hasn't always been easy in that front, even dating all the way back to season 1 with the dog. And it's venturing even more there now. And I don't think it needs to.
Yeah, and for some of it, it just didn't add anything. Like, if this was an actual rabbit that was being held by its scruff without having its bottom held up,
Mm.
and it was going through that pain for no reason, that scene didn't actually add anything to what Ty ended up doing later on.
Yeah.
She's just pumping herself up by killing a rabbit. I'm like, okay, like that didn't really need to happen,
Mhm.
because when we get to the end anyways, with
Yeah.
when Ty is sitting there facing a human, she's unable to do it until her other side comes up.
Yeah. Well, we will get into everything else that's going on in this episode now, but that is our PSA about rabbits. Miss Fifi Fontaine is the cutest rabbit who has ever existed in the history of rabbits.
Thank you so much, guys, for listening to that.
Well, if you guys do want more discussions about Yellowjackets, be sure to hit that subscribe button, because in addition to covering this show, we are also in the midst right now of doing Severance. We're
Mhm.
taking on the White Lotus, which is
Mhm.
having a really, really fun season. Of Speaking of
Really
fun,
fun.
you guys should really check out Nine Bodies and a Mexican Morgue on MGM Plus. It's one of our favorite surprises of the year. It's still very early on to the season. It's just a 6-episode show, so why not check it out?
Absolutely. And if you want to support us further, you can check out our Patreon. We'll have a link for you below.
Yeah.
And we are covering over there right now The Pit, which is airing on Max,
Yeah.
and Prime Target, which just finished airing on Apple TV Plus.
Thank you guys so much. So, since we've already talked a little bit about some stuff in the past, let's just
Yep.
stay there for a moment. And I will at least admit this. I was surprised that Coach Ben did not get killed in this episode. And I just thought you guys have sort of played around this will they or won't they with this character for the entire season. Ever since the end of season 2, I have been sitting back and being like, okay, this guy's days are numbered. We've never seen him in the present. He's gonna go. And I thought they just did this long, drawn out process to sort of be like, okay, even if we don't want to do it, we're gonna do it, and this is why we feel so terrible in the present, and why there are all these things that we're just not willing to talk about. It's because we took out this guy, and lo and behold, he was innocent.
Yeah, I feel like he's in the present. I had been feeling that they weren't going to kill him because it was very obvious, and in general, this show is not obvious.
I just found that not only him being alive was a surprise to me, but also the way in which it happened, where it turns out that he's alive mostly just because of a vision. Like, I was hoping that
Yeah.
he would be alive because of, I don't know, a change of heart, a realization, something other than supernatural forces have interfered. But, this is a show that's making us all question, okay, what's real, what's supernatural, how much should we even believe in all of this stuff?
Yeah, and what spirituality and faith and visions. Like, we've had this vision now that he is the bridge that is
Yeah.
going to allow everyone to get home and to get back to the city. And I'm glad that it did play out like this. I'm not here to just watch Coach Ben just die just because after seeing the trial, I
Yeah.
really don't think he's the person that burnt down this cabin. And I know that the girls have made some mistakes with stuff like this in the
Mhm.
past, but it just feels like, I don't know,
Mhm.
killing off Coach Ben's just too obvious for this show.
Well, and it also does raise these questions of, I mean, okay, we did see Akila's vision, so we know what she saw,
Yeah.
and we know how that was implemented. But
Yeah.
Travis, is Travis being forthcoming when it comes to what he is
Right?
actually seeing or put together? Because that, to me, would be very, very interesting. The idea that everybody gets so down the hole with the wilderness as this like spiritual entity that somebody is just like, oh, the wilderness told me to do this, and they really didn't, and you're just making it up.
Yeah, I had been wondering for a little while if Travis really saw that she was actually the chosen one, or if he was just like, I don't want to take any more
Yeah.
of this mushroom tea. I can't really handle it anymore. Let this be somebody else's problem. Anybody who drinks the tea is going to have some sort of visions because that's what this tea does. So it can be you.
I like that idea. To me, so much more. It's a lot more interesting to sort of have things go that way. But yeah, I'm not mad at all that Coach is still around. Like, I know he's not everybody's favorite character under the sun, but I think that the Yellow Jackets, they need a foil, and I think beyond
Yep.
that, they need somebody who kind of serves as a reminder of a sense of humanity that exists outside of the wilderness. Where Coach is older, he's gone through more stuff in his life. Like,
Yep.
he's still, I think, clinging to an element of what life is like on the outside world, and he's just kind of constantly being hit with these reminders. It's like, okay, this is not the outside world anymore. You are completely at our mercy. We're operating with this sense of lawlessness where it's like, yeah, sure, Coach survives, but it's not like he is immune to getting any punishment at all, like we saw with Melissa and Shauna at the end of this.
Yes, they came in and they have now made it that Ben can't walk at all.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like thinking, okay, I understand they want to have some sort of punishment. They want to make sure he can't get away, but nobody's thinking ahead. What if you guys have to relocate? What if he is the way to get you out of here and now he's unable to get around at all to help you guys?
Yeah, it's a real problem that they're clearly not thinking through. I mean, especially because Shauna and Melissa, I think they're operating from this space of anger, hurt.
Revenge!
Yes,
My
revenge.
favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a huge thing that their minds are being clouded. And I think Melissa in particular, she's just operating from this space now of, okay, I just want to enable Shauna because I believe in Shauna. I care about her. I have feelings for her, like whatever the motivation there is. But that's a really dangerous and difficult thing out there because if you're basically putting all of your belief in somebody else, that means you're almost going to buy into anything that they're going to do. And that's problematic because if that enables Shauna to go further and further, where she does things even darker and more intense than anybody else out there, that could lead to more people being killed.
The more and more I'm seeing Melissa, the more and more she looks like Elijah Wood. And we did just do
Yes.
a video about the idea that we think that Walter is her brother. And then I'm watching through this episode even more, and I'm like, oh man, like
Yeah.
this actress and Elijah Wood, they really look similar.
And I think one of the ideas we talked about in that video too was just this idea that maybe Walter wasn't always like this, but
Yeah.
maybe by the time Melissa gets back, if she makes it back, and we think that
Mhm.
she's probably being played by Hilary Swank in the present
Yeah.
whenever she's supposed to show up.
Yeah.
But it's just this idea of he sees how different Melissa has become, how much she's changed, and it changes him because
Mhm.
he doesn't know how to handle this anymore. And I think we're seeing in real time in the past, like, how much she is being distorted and how much she's finding her
Yes.
sense of power in enabling Shauna, but also she's getting some really potentially dark instincts, and that
Mhm.
may enable some dark instincts in Walter, who we have seen has no problem taking people out, even if it is under this guise of, oh, I'm protecting the Yellow Jackets. Or are you protecting the Yellow Jackets, or are you just sparing them for now because you have a different purpose for them later?
I am really enjoying Misty in the present without the other Yellow Jackets. Watching her just channel her Natalie
Yeah,
and wearing the leather jacket and going about her business as her citizen detective, trying to
yeah,
figure out what happened to Lottie. This feels like a very real reaction to losing someone in their group, where it feels like the rest of them are not really feeling it. Van is a little bit where she's just like, "Oh my goodness, we just lost somebody."
yeah,
Ty's like, "Let's order something off the menu. Let's order everything
yeah,
off the menu. I'm hungry." I'm just like, "What is happening here?" And Shauna's then also just becoming a detective as well for no reason.
yeah,
Misty's story feels like the most realistic thing that would be happening. That she would be diving into it. She feels like these people were her friends.
yeah,
They all went through something together. They are all bound in their trauma together. And the idea that this was just an accident just
yeah.
isn't sitting with Misty.
No, and I think that Misty probably is the person who's going to actually figure out another clue or two because of this. Like, I think we're eventually going to this spot where we're going to see Melissa slash Hillary Swank, regardless of whether or not she took out Lottie. I think she's
Right.
going to surface at some point, and I think it's probably going to be Misty who ends up tracking her down just based on the way in which she's behaving. Like, I've made this no secret in the past. Like, I am a big Christina Ricci fan, and I have been for decades. So I'm always going to be in her corner. But I think that this was a really fun performance for her because you do see some of that quirky Misty, but you do also see some of that grief. And I think she has a
Yeah.
reaction that's pretty in tune for her character that makes sense for her character to have. And that's kind of in contrast to the Shauna stuff, which is just driving me up a wall where it's like, okay, of instead of having her be, I don't know, around Callie, around Jeff, we have
Yes.
her with Walter of all people, where they're doing this undercover escapade with Lottie's dad, and it just felt too hokey for me. It felt too much like this was a storyline out of a sitcom where it's like, oh, we're trying to get answers. And it's like, okay, yeah, I believe that Shauna would want to try to get answers, but I just don't know if I buy her getting answers with Walter of all people, who was suspicious of her going into all of this.
I don't believe it at all. They have lost the script with Shauna's story entirely. I think that with Lottie being dead, she would be with Callie because Callie is going to be having definitely some sort of heavy reaction to this.
Yeah.
And I feel like for all of Shauna's faults and
Hmm.
selfishness that is with this character, she does care about her daughter a lot.
Yeah.
And, she's the person who sent Lottie out of the house, and now she's sort of learning other things like, oh, Lottie did have somewhere else to stay. Well, why was she coming here then? My daughter was very involved with Lottie, and now Lottie is gone. It feels like there's a story that's right there for the taking
Yeah.
for Shauna, and you've got her dressed up as like an internet person going through this. I hated it. I didn't like it at all.
It just felt cheesy, and I think that this show, it does have its sort of moments of silliness, but at the same time, they're always either counterbalanced by some dark stuff, or it feels like there's a real reason for them.
Yeah.
I don't think the reason for this was strong enough, and you're contrasting that as well to everything else that's going on with the Yellowjackets, where I think the Misty stuff, like you said, was really good.
Yeah, it
I
was really good.
I think Van's reaction was really good. I mean,
Yeah.
once again, I really like Lauren Ambrose, so I'm always gonna be partial to side with her. But beyond all of that, I just think that this whole idea of course, she's gonna raise questions about Ty in this instance because
Mhm.
Ty was off for a while in New York. We know what the state of Van's health is. We know that this idea of, oh, you can take out other people, maybe Van would live a little bit longer. It seems on paper that Ty has a motive, means, and opportunity to do this. Like, it makes sense that there would be questions around her.
She didn't exactly deny it. She was more
No.
so like, "Do you really think that I would blah 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 blah?" It's like, well, yeah. That I
Yeah.
mean, why else is she bringing it up? Of course, you're capable of this. Absolutely, you're capable of this.
Yeah.
So, did you do this? I don't know. It feels very, very, very obvious
Yeah.
that it would be her. She had the motive. She's missing. The fact that the police are kind of like, she fell down the stairs. There's nothing suspicious about all the candles that were
Yeah.
up the stairs or the scratches on the wall or any of these other things. Nothing suspicious here at all. It was also very weird that the father kind of mentioned that as well,
Yeah.
where it's kind of like, oh, if the police know what's good for them, they're going to continue on with this story that she fell down the stairs. I was like, wow, that's a really big admission.
Yeah.
What did you have to do with her going down the stairs?
It's odd. I kind of get the sense because we got a little bit of other backstory with Lottie in here, and we saw a little bit of various time periods with that character.
Yeah.
I really am getting this feeling that for a lot of her life, Lottie was sort of this metaphorical caged bird where she was with this very wealthy family. It seems like they didn't really believe in her, that they really just kind of thought, oh, you're crazy, so you can't do anything that's
Right.
going to like come back on us. And I think there's this part of even after she's gone where they're just like, we don't want the media circus. We've already gone through too much. Let's just make sure, hey, police officers, look how rich we are. Look how you don't want to deal with us. Just
Yeah.
have this be an accident and then we can finally move on with our lives. Like, it's whether or not Lottie's dad or her family had anything to do with her going. I think they are in this opportunistic state where they're just like, we don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. And that's pretty heartbreaking. I mean, Lottie is not the most likable character in Yellowjackets history by any means. Like, she frustrated a lot of us to no end, but to see her go out like this, where her family's just not that caring seemingly about it, it's hard.
Yeah, it was good to learn a little more about her in that way, where it's like, oh yeah, her parents were together and they were at this penthouse, and then they divorced, and then she moved out and the father stayed there. And it does make sense that the father would just be like, I just don't want to deal with this
Yeah.
anymore. So cover it up, make it not a murder, nothing foul, just
Yeah.
she fell down the stairs. Like, it's time to move on. This has been going on now for decades. I'm over it.
Yeah, I am still coming out of this episode feeling pretty similarly to how I was at the end of this past episode and even in our theory video, where I kind of feel like either Walter did this or
Yeah,
Melissa did this with potentially the help of Walter, because
right.
we know about Walter's hacking capabilities, and he's going to be able to sort of figure out and pinpoint, okay, here is where Lottie is. This is where it is time to strike. And you need
Yeah.
that sort of advanced knowledge if you're going to be able to carry something like this out.
It feels like Walter just has multiple motivations for this. Like,
Yeah.
if he is Melissa's brother, then, yeah, there would be a motivation there to be like, okay, my sister came back, not the same. Things are not right. I don't feel good about it. It's
Yeah.
these people's fault that my sister isn't doing as well as she is, if that's actually the case.
Hmm.
But there's also just the motivation that he wants Misty back. And the way that that happens is you get rid of the friends, one, because
Yeah.
they are influencing her in a way that is driving him apart from her. But two, he said it himself, Misty likes a challenge.
Yeah.
Misty likes a chase. So this is how that happens. Lottie gets killed, and then now I'm on the case and she's on the case, and we're both, against each other. And for some reason, that seems to work for bringing Misty closer to Walter, because it has in the past.
Yeah, Walter just likes, I think, the thrill of this. And I think it can be
Yeah.
two things with him. It can be that he is working with Melissa and he is sort of doing this larger scheme. While at the same time, I think he can have feelings for Misty at the same time and want to have Misty close, because he may not have realized he was going to feel this way in
Right.
advance. So there's one more theory I have about Ben here in the past. So I'm going to go back to the past for a
All
moment,
right.
put on the tinfoil hat.
Okay.
All right. So here's wondering why Ben needs to be alive. And
Hmm.
what did he discover in that time period that he was out there by himself? Because we
Yes.
know he was in that cave.
Yep.
We know that there was seemingly somebody who was in that cave before.
Hmm.
We know that he's found these supply caches, all
Hmm.
of this sort of stuff. I think with Ben, we could eventually find some sort of connection to who else was out there before the Yellowjackets, and that information is going to eventually be key to the rescue, whenever that rescue is actually going to happen. Question mark.
Yeah, because if there was someone there before, which there was, we've
Yeah.
seen the caches and stuff like that, either those people have died out there or they got out. So there could be enough information that Ben has with what happened with them if they got out, that then they can also get out.
Yeah, I think, because I think one of the larger questions here remains like, okay, how is anyone going to find out where the Yellowjackets are, let alone save them? And I think it has to be some sort of connection to somebody else. So it's just, for now, that's the idea that makes the most sense to me. And we talked too much about the bonus episode that's out there already,
Yeah.
but I think that's probably going to eventually be key to a lot of this as well.
I think the biggest question I've always sort of had about the Yellowjackets in general is,
Yeah.
why did they all end up just settling? Like,
Mm.
now that it's the springtime and everything is melted and whatever, you've got some animals. Why not jerky your animals, get together some water, and just start trying to get out? Like,
Yeah.
why are you settled in the way you are? Nobody's looking for you. You don't have the transponder. You know that no one's
Yeah.
looking for you. Why are you not trying to get out now that the snow is gone?
One, I don't have a good answer to this, but two, like, this is the only crazy answer I can come up with, is just this idea that they're all pretty young, pretty reckless. I think that there might be, as twisted as this sounds, a couple of them who actually kind of like being in this
Absolutely.
society.
Absolutely.
I think they're, and those
But
people,
not all of them.
no, I think there are probably people out there who are thinking like you are, who are just like, why don't we get some stuff together, go out there.
Small group, just
Yeah.
start, getting through the forest. The forest is going to end
Yeah.
at some point, and we're going to find people, or we're going to
Yeah.
find help. So let's just start hiking out of here.
I feel like they're probably afraid. Because I will say this: if I am somebody who was in this world with the Yellow Jackets, I would also be like Coach Bannon, just trying to run away from them because I have just watched them do what they have done to Jackie,
Yep.
let alone Javi, and it's
Yep.
just like at a certain point, I'm gonna be like, okay, I want no part of this. But I think that's a pretty big driving force, fear for a lot of these characters, and I think that's only going to be amplified if we are actually setting up this sort of showdown between Natalie and Lottie and then Shauna. It's like everybody's got their own kind of philosophical camps, and
Mhm.
like this stuff is going to come to a head, I think, in a pretty severe way.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, that's where we are with Yellow Jacket season 3, episode 5. It's like this episode's still doing some compelling stuff that we're interested in and we can talk about in the upcoming episodes, but it is just some weird decision making, both in the past and the present. It just feels like they had a lot of momentum and they've lost a little bit of it after this episode.
Yeah, this episode, especially the stuff in the present, we've been saying this all
Yeah.
season, it feels directionless. It feels like it's a bit of a rudderless boat. And while we do have the Lottie mystery,
Yeah.
who killed Lottie, and that part of the mystery, it also feels like they are making it kind of hokey the minute that you have Shauna in there. Shauna didn't need to be in there. I would have completely believed it if it's just Walter versus Misty, and
Yeah.
that's what it should have been. And have a more compelling story with Callie
Yeah.
and her family and everything that's going on there.
Yeah. Like you made Callie a bigger character this season for a reason. Like,
Because of Lottie. So
yeah.
why aren't you with your kid? I don't know.
It is funny the emotional journey that we've been on. I never thought I would be in a Yellow Jackets video being like, you know who I want more of?
I
Callie.
know.
And yet here we are. What a road we're on, everybody.
It
But
just makes the most sense.
yeah, that should always be a North Star on a show like this. Like what makes the most sense for the characters. Don't just go for the jaw-dropping moment or the silliest moment. Go for what actually informs the journey.
Yes.
But let us know what you thought of this episode, your theories for where things could go from here. And also be sure to hit that subscribe button. Help us get to 70,000. We really, really appreciate that.
Yes.
And you can support us further by joining our Patreon. That link is in the description below. We have The Pit on Max, Prime Target on Apple TV Plus, which just ended, other past shows, The Penguin, Dune Prophecy. Thank you guys so much for your support.
Thank you.
We'll see you here next time.